everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 35 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in Lucha Underground history with match number 16 on our list, which is the Lucha Underground title match between the champion Prince Puma and the challenger Mil Muertes from the August 5th, 2015 edition of Lucha Underground titled Ultima Lucha Part 2. So we've talked about Ultima Lucha quite a bit this season. It's basically Lucha Underground's, version of WrestleMania or Starrcade or, whatever your big kind of year-end, or in this case season-end, finale would normally be. In my opinion, no Ultima Lucha was greater than the first. It was a two-night event, originally just supposed to be the 2-hour finale. They added the extra hour that was main evented by the Drago and Hernandez Believers Backlash match that we talked about on a previous episode. But they really jam-packed these 2 hours for, what ended up being the actual finale. Basically, all of the guys that they had built up through the first season of Lucha Underground as being, the faces of the company really got their time to shine on the finale. You had Johnny Mundo, who wrestled Alberto El Patron, Alberto Del Rio, whatever you want to call him, basically in, an ex-WWE versus ex-WWE kind of buzzworthy match. You had Phoenix become the inaugural Gift of the Gods champion. You had Pentagon Jr. Have his, barbaric Cero Miedo match with Vampiro. And you had our main event here between the face of the company, the Lucha Underground champion Prince Puma, and the biggest heel going in the company at the time, Mil Muertes. They did a fantastic job building Mil Muertes up all through season 1 as this big unstoppable challenger. He had his feud with Phoenix. He lost Grave Consequences. He was resurrected by Katrina. He won their death match. He defeated Drago to earn this title shot, albeit Drago was a little bit screwed by Hernandez, but, is what it is there. And it built him up as this unstoppable force that, Prince Puma had beaten everybody up until this point. Would he be able to beat Mil? So it was a really well-built main event between, in my opinion, the two biggest stars in the company at that point. It was something that a lot of people wanted to see. Mil had established that he had great chemistry with Phoenix, who, the premier high flyer in wrestling. Prince Puma, Ricochet was right there alongside him. Arguably, in my opinion, maybe not the better of the two flyers, but maybe the better, well-rounded wrestler, and certainly from, a card positioning standpoint, the bigger star in Lucha Underground. So I think, the buzz was heavy for this match. People were really excited for it. It absolutely delivers. It's a fantastic main event. It was well worthy of, finishing off the first season of Lucha Underground. Much like Mil and Phoenix, and this isn't the first, Puma and Mil Muertes match we've had on this countdown. In fact, we've had two other ones, both from later seasons, but nonetheless showing the chemistry that these guys had. And, although they had the Grave Consequences match we talked about, they had the Boyle Heights street fight that we talked about, ultimately their best match was their straight up one-on-one match that they had, proving they really didn't need the gimmicks. And I talk about this all the time, that, Lucha Underground is really known for these, grisly, bloody gimmick, feud-ending matches. But here it was just a straight up one-on-one competition that, blew away, in my opinion, the other contests they had. It's really, really good. The power versus speed dynamic is here. It's perfect. And they do just a really good job with it, showing both guys having game plans for this match. Mil completely mauls Prince Puma at the start of this match, just doesn't give him any room to breathe. Puma finally starts to get rolling a little bit with his speed, so what does Mil do? He immediately throws him to the floor, brings him up through the crowd, and transitions it into a crowd brawl, which he is going to win, right? He's had those brawls up until this point through Lucha Underground. It just made perfect sense. I really, really enjoyed it. Some great stuff along the way, too. There's crazy spots that we'll get to. But Prince Puma being a face, they do, a spot I really, really liked here where, he goes to hit Mil and, Katrina kind of gets in the way. And, if this was mid to late 90s ECW, he would have decked Katrina and it would have got a big pop. But, this is the mid 2010s that Lucha Underground was happening in. Prince Puma's a babyface, so he does, this chivalrous thing, and he kind of stops short. And what does he do instead? He picks Katrina up and basically like swing dances her around his back into a kick on Mill, you know, not causing her any harm, but using her to cause the opponent harm. It was just really good. And again, they could have kind of went, you know, that lowbrow route with him, you know, hitting the female manager. And I appreciated the fact that they didn't do it. You know, I talked about Mill turning this into a big brawl, and that's exactly what he does. We've talked about, you know, the Lucha Underground chair throw so many times in this season, so of course we get that here in the big main event match where, you know, Mill just tosses Puma through all the wooden chairs at ringside. He goes to throw him into the wall, and Puma does like a backflip off the wall, which was really, really cool, but can't really muster the offense. And Mill ends up giving a powerbomb on the ring stairs, which are wooden in Lucha Underground. It was completely brutal. And then they just do another crazy spot. They, you know, do the Benoit and Jericho Royal Rumble 2001 ladder match spot where Puma goes for a tope and just gets walloped in the head with a chair while he's doing it. It looked great. Really, really fun spot. Great sequences and counter wrestling, and you know, even though the match is a bit of a brawl, right, they have that chemistry. You know, Mill is a great base for Puma, and they have these awesome counter sequences. Puma gets to show off a lot of strength, which, you know, I've talked about it before in some of Mill's matches where, you know, sometimes he'll incorporate a little bit of lucha. You know, he'll do a head scissors or a dive from the top, and it always kind of shocks you and comes unexpectedly. So they do the opposite here, right? Mill didn't need to do the lucha here against Puma, but, you know, Puma got to show off some power. He hit the Benadriller, which is a fireman's carry, into a kick. Got a great near fall off that for 2. He hit the Northern Light suplex, rolled into the deadlift vertical suplex, which couldn't believe he hit that on Mill. Just shows, you know, how powerful he is, you know, for a relatively slender guy. The biggest spot of the match by far is when Mil Muertes hits the Biggie Langston, you know, suicide spear, the tope through the ropes into the spear off the ring apron. They went for it through a table. They ended up just hitting the edge of the table, which was nasty. Mill proceeded to just powerbomb Puma through the rest of the table, but it was really, really great stuff. In the ring, Mill ended up going for a spear again, and Puma like flipped over it, which was super cool. He hit a big series of kicks, finally put Mill down, went up top, hit his signature 630, and only got 2 off of it. The first time in Lucha Underground that somebody had kicked out of the 630. They did an amazing job all season long building that up. That is Prince Puma's finish. Nobody gets up from it. If he hits it, it's over. He'd put down Johnny Mundo with it. He'd put down Phoenix with it. He'd put down Cage with it. He'd put down Hernandez with it. He'd put down all of these credible, you know, challengers to his title, but ultimately it wasn't enough to put down Mill. And I think that kickouts can be so overdone in wrestling, and eventually, you know, finishers start to lose their luster a little bit. This was perfect. You know, they built it up to the point where once he hits that, you know nobody's kicking out. So to actually get the kick out, it was really shocking. It was really well done. And from there, it's lights out for Puma. His best shot, couldn't put Mill down. He went to the well once too many times, went for it again, missed it, ate the spear finally, this time still hitting a flip, but hitting a flip bump off the spear, which looked wicked. And they ended up doing it the opposite, where, you know, Mill hits his flatliner, which again, they'd established as his finisher. He'd beaten everybody in the run-up with that. Puma kicks out, again, great near fall, makes perfect sense. The champion that's been unbeatable still has a little bit of life left in him, and they do a big time finish where Puma's on the top. Mill runs up the ropes, you know, Kurt Angle belly-to-belly suplex style, and ends up pulling Puma down into a flatliner off the top. Of course, there's no getting up from that, and it's enough for the 3 count to give Mil Muertes the title. Earlier in the night, the Disciples of Death, who had recently debuted, basically the henchmen of Mil Muertes, had captured the trios titles. You know, Katrina was the top, you know, manager, baddie, whatever you want to call her in Lucha Underground at the time. So we got a really great, not show closing spot, because we got an awesome, you know, cinematic ending to the season with, you know, a 5-6 minute kind of video package at the end. But from an in-ring perspective, you know, the closing shot was, you know, Mill with his title, the Disciples with their titles, Katrina there, and that would directly lead us into season 2, a much darker place where, you know, Katrina would kind of take over the Lucha Underground temple with Mill on his throne as the champion. So a great, you know, lead into season 2 as well. This match is excellent. I feel, even though it was such a big match in Lucha Underground, ultimately, like a lot of the matches that weren't, you know, gimmick matches, it does kind of fall under the radar a little bit as a hidden gem, but it is absolutely excellent. You can catch it for free on YouTube, which is wicked. I will link it on my Twitter account. You can watch Lucha Underground possibly on Tubi, depending where you live, but if it's not available there, a quick Google search, you can find this stuff online with relative ease. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50, and please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50. Top 50.